Certain stories in Thailand are not meant for guidebooks or tourist brochures. They are part of the land itself, whispered only when the sun is long gone and the house has settled into quiet. These aren't tales for entertainment, but cautionary maps for navigating the unseen world, spoken in the low, serious tones usually reserved for family secrets. The night in the countryside possesses a different quality, a texture you can almost feel on your skin. It's a heavy, expectant silence, a stark contrast to the city's constant hum. It's a silence that listens back, where every snapped twig or distant bark carries immense weight, a language that urbanites have long since forgotten how to interpret. If you find these stories compelling, a quick like on the video helps us uncover more of them to share with you, and we truly
appreciate your support. My brother-in-law, Whit, is a logistics manager, a man whose life is governed by spreadsheets, fuel consumption rates, and delivery deadlines. For years, his professional world was the cab of a pickup truck, traversing the long, lonely arteries of Thailand that connect Bangkok to the northeastern provinces, the region known as Isan. He is profoundly practical, a man who trusts what he can see, what he can touch, and what his balance sheet confirms. But one night, on a routine run to Khon Kaen, he encountered a column on a ledger he could never account for. He was on Highway 2, the Mitropop Road, the Friendship Highway. During the day, it's a roaring, chaotic river of commerce, trucks, buses, and dangerously overloaded motorbikes, all jostling for position under a hazy sun. But at 2 in the morning, it transforms. It becomes a solitary pilgrimage through an ocean of darkness. The road is an endless, hypnotic ribbon of asphalt, the white lines pulling you forward into a trance. The only other signs of life are the occasional pairs of taillights fading into the distance, or the blinding headlights of another lone driver passing in the opposite direction.
Fleeting connection in the vast emptiness. These drives breed a specific kind of fatigue, a state where the mind begins to play tricks. The shadows in the sugarcane fields seem to shift, and the mind drifts to the stories other drivers tell at truck stops, tales of phantom figures on the roadside, of strange radio signals that fade as quickly as they appear. Whit
always dismissed them as products of exhaustion and too many energy drinks. He was tired, bone tired. The kind of deep weariness where your eyelids feel like lead weights and the white lines on the road start to pulse and blur. He'd been pushing for 12 hours straight, chasing a sunrise delivery deadline. That was his first mistake. He knew, logically, that he needed to pull over. Even 15 minutes of stillness could reset his focus. He passed a brightly lit gas station, a beacon of modernity in the dark, but the thought of the harsh fluorescent lights, the tinny pop music, and the forced cheerfulness of the 24-hour convenience store felt like an assault on his frayed nerves. He craved absolute quiet. A few kilometers later, a small, unlit side road branched off to the left. It was barely more than a gravel track,
disappearing into the trees. It looked like a local access road, the kind that might lead to a small village or a remote farm. He reasoned he could pull in 100 meters, kill the engine, and be enveloped by the pure, uncomplicated darkness he needed. That was his second mistake. He turned the wheel and his pickup truck's tires protested with a loud crunch on
the loose gravel. The transition was immediate and absolute. The moment he left the highway's faint glow, the world was swallowed by a profound, ink-black night. The trees, mostly acacia and tamarind, grew thick and close on either side, their branches interlocking overhead to form a canopy that blotted out the moon and stars. He drove slowly, his headlights carving a narrow, trembling tunnel through the oppressive black. He was looking for a small clearing, a wide shoulder, any place to stop. After maybe 200 meters, the road opened up slightly on the right. In the bright, unwavering beam of his headlights, he saw it. It was a San Pra Pum, a spirit house. For those unfamiliar, they are a ubiquitous sight in Thailand, ornate miniature temples on pillars, offerings of shelter for the guardian spirit of the land.
You see them guarding homes, office buildings, even shopping malls. They are markers of human presence. But this one was a paradox. It was utterly, profoundly alone. There were no houses, not a single one. No farm buildings, no rickety fences, not even the faint, hopeful glow of a single light bulb on the horizon. There was only the narrow road, the dense, impenetrable wall of trees, and this brightly painted shrine standing a silent, solitary vigil over nothing. What truly unsettled him was its condition. It wasn't abandoned or neglected. The paint was fresh, a vibrant, almost aggressive red and gold. At its base were offerings, a small bottle of red Fanta, its color lurid in the artificial light, a garland of yellow marigolds just beginning to wilt at the edges, and the blackened stubs of 3 incense sticks pushed into a pot of sand. Someone had been there, recently. Someone was dutifully tending to this shrine in the middle of absolute nowhere. It felt fundamentally wrong, like a perfectly made bed in a house that had been bombed out. Wit switched off the engine. The sudden total silence was deafening. The familiar drone of the diesel engine was replaced by the
high-pitched, electric chirping of insects, a sound so constant it felt like the air itself was vibrating. He leaned his head back against the seat, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to dissolve. He was isolated, anonymous, just a tired man in a truck on a road to nowhere. It was peaceful for about a minute. He was on the edge of sleep when he heard it. It wasn't a sudden, startling noise. It was quiet, intimate, and all the more terrifying for it. It came directly from the shrine. At first, he struggled to identify it. It was a wet, rhythmic scraping, a persistent, grating sound, like fingernails being dragged across a rough surface, a soft but insistent gnawing. His practical mind immediately offered a solution: an animal, a stray soy dog chewing on a bone left as an offering. It was the only logical explanation. He almost relaxed, but the sound continued, and the longer he listened, the less sense it made. The sound lacked the casual, contented quality of a feeding animal. It had a frantic, desperate energy. This wasn't the sound of a creature enjoying a meal. It was the sound of something starving, trying to extract the very last molecule of sustenance
from something hard and unyielding. It was the sound of teeth on glass. Scrape, click, scrape, click. A wet, slobbering sound punctuated by the sharp tap of something hard. He opened his eyes, heart beginning to thud against his ribs. The shrine sat
there, silent and still in his headlights, but the sound was undeniable, seeming to emanate from within the tiny structure itself. He found himself holding his breath, straining to hear over the low hum in his own ears. The sound was wrong. It was a deeply, fundamentally wrong sound to hear in the dead of night, in this desolate place. It was a sound of private, desperate hunger, and he felt a cold dread creep up his spine, the feeling of being an intruder on something ancient and terrible. The practical part of his brain fought back one last time. A large beetle? A rat trying to get at the sweet, sticky residue on the Fanta bottle? But his gut, the primal, instinctual part of his brain that our ancestors relied on for survival, was screaming. It was screaming one single, unambiguous word: leave. He reached for the ignition, his hand trembling. The plastic of the key felt slick in his sweaty palm. The very instant his fingers made contact with the cold metal, the scraping stopped. It didn't fade out, it ceased. The abrupt cutoff was more shocking than the noise itself. The silence that rushed back in was profound, heavier than before. Even the insects seemed to have fallen. Quiet. It was a dead, waiting silence. And in that void, he heard a new sound, a single, soft, wet sigh. It wasn't a sigh of tiredness. It was a sigh of deep, guttural satisfaction, the sound of a craving finally sated. And it came from directly outside his truck, right beside his driver's side window, so close he could almost feel the vibration of it in the glass. Whit didn't look. He didn't dare turn his head. He stared straight ahead at the shrine, at the bottle of red Fanta, at the impenetrable darkness behind it. He turned the key. The engine roared to life, the sound of violation in the tomb-like stillness. He slammed the truck into reverse, not bothering to check his mirrors, his tires spinning on the gravel, kicking up stones that pinged against the undercarriage. He swung the truck back onto the narrow road in a wild,
Panicked arc, the headlights slashing across the trees. For a split second, the beam illuminated the area right beside where his door had been. There was nothing there, just tall grass, swaying in a way that felt unnatural, as if something heavy had just passed through it. He didn't wait. He floored it. The truck fishtailed for a moment before finding purchase, and he shot back down the access road toward the distant, welcoming glow of the highway. He didn't slow down until his tires were back on the smooth, painted asphalt of the Metropop road. He glanced in his rearview mirror once. The small road was just a dark slash in the trees, already being swallowed by the night. He drove for another hour, the adrenaline making his heart pound, before he felt safe enough to even think about stopping.
He didn't rest again until he was in the brightly lit, noisy chaos of Corn Can City. When he got home a few days later, he didn't mention it to my sister. But over a small glass of whiskey, he told her father. My father-in-law is an old man from Isan, and he carries the knowledge of the land in his bones. He listened to Whit's story patiently, his face unreadable. When Whit finished, the old man just nodded slowly. He asked for the exact location, which highway, which turnoff, what was nearby. Whit told him it was about 30 kilometers before the turn for Bonpai. The old man's face, usually a mask of good-natured wrinkles, became still and distant. He knew the place. That road, he explained, doesn't lead to any village. It never has. It just pushes into the forest for a few hundred meters and then dies, consumed by the trees. Decades ago, he said, a woman from a nearby village was riding her motorbike home late at night. A truck, speeding and careless, struck her and never stopped. She wasn't found until the sun was high the next day. Her family was poor, unable to afford a grand funeral or a proper plot. In their grief and desperation, they erected a shrine to give her spirit, her winyan, a place to rest, to anchor it so it wouldn't wander. But, he continued, a spirit that dies so violently and unjustly is left with a terrible hunger. It's not a hunger for food, but a hunger for the life that was stolen, a yearning for justice, a desperate loneliness. The offerings, the Fanta, the flowers, the incense, they are gestures. They are meant to soothe her, to let her know she isn't entirely forgotten. But for a spirit like that, it's like offering a cup of water to a person dying of thirst. It's a temporary comfort, but it's never enough. You never, ever stop on that road at night, the old man said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Especially not alone. To stop your engine there is to announce your presence. It's like knocking on the door of a starving person's house while carrying a feast. You are inviting them to notice you. The sound Whit heard, he explained, was the spirit's desperation. The scraping was her trying to lick the last vestiges of sweetness from the outside of the glass bottle, an impossible, frustrating task. The wet clicking was her teeth on the unyielding surface. The sigh Whit heard, that was the moment's. He gave up on the empty bottle, because she had just noticed that something much better had arrived. Something warm, something breathing, something full of life. Whit had to go to the temple after that. He made a significant offering to the monks and did what's called tambun, making merit, a way of spiritually cleansing yourself and sharing that good karma with others, including the spirits who might need it. Quietly dedicated the merit he made to the woman by the side of the road. He hasn't driven that route at night since. If a job requires it, he'll take the long way around, adding nearly 2 hours to his journey. His company's GPS logs it as an anomaly. An inefficient route his boss sometimes questions. But Whit doesn't care. He knows that some roads aren't just lines on a map. They are stories. And some of them are warnings, written in silence and solitude. For anyone foolish enough to stop and listen in the dark.